We are fighting a war against evil.
Big fan of your work, mate.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out.
FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. This is also the Conservative Daily Podcast for the day. We are rolling live from Las Vegas, Nevada. I have with me Joe Altman. He's standing next to me, just getting himself together. How's your cup of coffee coming?
It's really good in my suspendables mug.
I feel like you stole that.
I did. I stole this mug from Zach. So Zach, thank you. What happened is I stole it back from him after.
Because I brought it for you.
Yes.
In your mind, in your heart.
I did yes.
Yeah, that checks out. All right, folks. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in the world. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening over here at SHOT Show. This is the firearms trade show convention that happens annually in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you're not familiar with it, that's what we're doing here. I've been meeting with some of the folks that are sponsoring the podcast, so that's pretty cool. We're meeting with folks that are like-minded when it comes to the Second Amendment, talking to people that are interested in prepping and getting gear and getting, all the things that we kind of like to spend our money on that we maybe don't have to, but we would like to. There's some neat stuff that's happening on the floor, but more importantly, there's some wild stuff happening right now. Kind of want to get into it with Joe about the speed of government. We're going to do that in 1 second. First, we're going to go to a sponsor. We're going to say thank them for sponsoring us, and I think they're actually at the SHOT Show, so I'm looking to find them a little bit later on today. These are the folks over at My Patriot Supply, and you guys can find them by going to preparelikekyle.com. We're going to just read it right here. This is what they say. We've seen the headlines. There's cyber attacks on our power grids. There are drones in the sky, violent attacks in America every day, which is another one to talk about today. The ugly truth is that no leader, no system can protect you from everything. You do have to rely on yourself. That's the way we want to do it. The last thing I want to be is standing in line, depending on help that may never come. That's actually very true. You guys know anything about me? One, I don't like lines. And two, I don't like waiting for someone else to save me. So that's why we've made our family prepared. We have the My Patriot Supply. We actually have the 90-day, but they're offering right now the 4-week emergency food kit, which gives you nutrition to stay strong in a crisis, 2,000 calories per day. This is the scaled-down version of the one that we have in our house. It's 100% of your daily values of 12 essential vitamins and minerals. Man, I remember reading that a lot on like cereal boxes when I was a kid, Joe. This kit keeps you going when the meals matter. Right now, they're offering $50 off for the 4-week. That's going to be the 1-month setup. This is the entry level kind of to get yourself squared away, and you can go to preparelikekyle.com to get yours. Again, it is preparelikekyle. That's the easy website. Don't put it off. You never want to wait. This is like an insurance policy. In fact, we were talking last night, a couple Green Berets, and they were just saying, listen, there's some things that you just buy, and ammunition is one of them, and you're better off having them than not. And if you need them, you're going to be in a bad spot if you don't have them. So check it out at preparelikekyle.com. All right, let's get into all this. Apollo, you want to hit it, buddy? So here we are sitting in beautiful Las Vegas. This is actually one of my least favorite cities in the world, Joe.
Oh, it is absolutely my least favorite.
Somebody was giving you a hard time yesterday, though. They were like, are you a Las Vegas guy? And you're like, no, I'm only here like 4 or 5 times a year.
But in fairness, I come here to play golf. And I know a lot of people that think, what if I want to go to a place that has like green grass and golf tees? I go to the desert. That's where I go, right? But Shadow Creek is probably one of the best golf courses in the country.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, so because you don't play golf.
I don't play golf.
We need to get you to play golf. I'm going to get you out on the golf course. It's going to be really terrible for the first probably 200 times. And then after
the first 200.
Why are you gay?
Perfect.
Why are you gay?
So what I wanted to start off with today, and folks, thanks for joining us in the chat. So I see a lot of you guys are out there and all the familiar faces that we normally see. I wanted to reflect on yesterday because that was kind of that might be the longest podcast, certainly the longest live podcast I've ever done. And it didn't feel like we needed to stop. It felt like we needed to keep going.
We could have probably gone on for another 4 hours easily.
I'm glad we didn't because I was destroyed today. I turned around and walked. Like I woke up this morning and I'm like, my legs hurt, my neck hurt, my back's hurts. Like that's part of walking around over at SHOT, but part of it was just the fact that like that was a heavy story, and it felt like I think Garrett O'Boyle was telling me in private comments. He said it felt like hearing my own story echoed back to me. All of our stories are unique. They all have different elements. We all had different experiences with people, and yet if you guys missed out on what we talked about yesterday, you could skip to the last hour if you just wanted the meat of Zach's story. But man, it kind of got emotional for a little bit there too. I think for you and me, the two of us are looking at each other going like,
all right, stop looking at each other.
Yeah. It's one of those awkward things where, like I said, you hear somebody else's story, you see the pain, and you're like, I know exactly what that pain is. It's rare that you can actually say that I've been in your shoes and I had the same animal come at me. And, I'm glad he survived. He's out there, hopefully making some deals today at SHOT Show. But anyway, that was a tough podcast to walk around with. It felt like a physical burden. I actually felt it on my shoulders when I woke up this morning.
The interesting part about it is that, I was telling you, we got to talk last night about this, and I was like, look, I could feel it. I could feel his pain.
Yeah.
And I tried to press on that a little bit, and then I was like, I probably shouldn't press on that.
One of those things that, so folks, when I used to do interrogations, when I used to do interviews of subjects, when I did them of victims, there are times when you have the ability to do things, right? You have the ability to push somebody to a place that they're going to go. But the question is, do you have permission?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I can often do that. I can elicit responses from folks. I know Zach has done the same thing. He spent a lot of time in criminal work. I used to do it as a paramedic. It's like sometimes you need information and you may not. The permission is that you need to know something. It's going to be awkward to get it, but you have to go get it. But a lot of times, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And honestly, that's a great lesson for our government at this point. Yeah. It'd be really nice for people in government to know just because you can, just because you are able, it doesn't mean that you really should. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. And so I always remember the story about Jurassic Park. Did you read the book?
Jurassic Park?
Yeah. Michael Crichton.
No.
All right. Well, it was fantastic.
I've read a lot of books. That's just not.
Well, that's one of those books. It's almost fiction, except he continues to talk. He uses science as sort of a paradigm to talk about ethics. And it's the ethics of biotechnology and DNA, and all that's going to actually be relevant to us in our lives, even today. But the story is scientists there in that movie. The reason why it was a problem, the reason why we had this issue is because man created dinosaurs. And the question is just because they could, did that mean that they should? It was a question of ethics. And honestly, you ready for this, Joe? The story of Jurassic Park is a modern tale of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's man rivaling the power of God and attempting to climb up there. It's the hubris that the Greeks used to talk about. It's that long form attempt to reach the divine when you have no business doing so because man's judgment is flawed. And so we oftentimes find ourselves humble in that. Anyway, having the ability to do something yesterday was one of those moments where the two of us we had this conversation last night, folks, but it was just maybe not. Maybe let's not push this button right now because we're all going through different things at different times. Worth discussing. I got an audio message from a government buddy of mine, an excellent FBI agent. We did a paradigm shift, you said, about the FBI yesterday.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that? And I'm going to kind of bring in somebody that discussion.
So I thought all FBI agents were shit before I met you.
Awesome.
I'm just going to tell you, I did. I did not think that they were, I had my, I had powder sent to the house through the mail. My wife and my daughter had to sit in the car till 3:00 in the morning while guys in ET suits had to walk down to the house and clear it. And the FBI was there and they never came to talk to me. And, I've had people terrorize my family, terrorize my wife. And, I live in a house that's fully fortified. And so I happen to have a high regard for the FBI. Mm-hmm. I met you, I met Steve, I met Garrett. I met all of these great people that were in the FBI. And then talking to Zach, he talked about a couple of his special agents and the fact that they didn't want to sign off on something that was unconstitutional and that they had a problem with it. And they got sent to the OPR, which is the Office of Professional Responsibility.
Mm-hmm. It's the FBI's internal affairs.
And
although they actually do have an internal affairs, I found out.
And so now I keep meeting all of these people that have been standing up. And there's other people in the FBI that I go, well, they got sanctioned, so to speak, for doing the right thing.
Yep.
And so it's hard for me to look at it and go, all right, well, the FBI is all shit because I don't think they are. I came back to this place where I'm like, okay, let me square this hole a little bit and try to figure out. And so I'm sitting here looking at Zach, looking at you and going, man, how many good people are there in the FBI? How many good people are there that are actually doing great work? And where is the fruit of the tree rotted? And frankly, it's at the top. And he said it. And I was like, got it.
It's also at the bottom because that's who's being recruited right now. So
right.
The problem is, and this is the difficulty that people face.
So the middle, it's a sandwich.
The problem is that people always want to make something simple. We always want a simple answer to a complex problem. This is the reason why people turn to terrorism. This is the reason why people decide that a school shooting or suicide or any of the sort of like really awful violence that we see out there. There's a lot of examples of complex problems, complex concerns with simple solutions. Like if I just did this thing, it would all be okay. That's never true.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody needs to read the Bible. There's no such thing as just do this one thing, unless that one thing is love God above all, love your neighbor as yourself. If you did that, we probably would actually be okay. But no one's ever come to that simple solution when it comes to violence, when they are listening to that other ear. You hear people sometimes and like, man, I'm pretty sure I'm doing what God wants me to do. And you're looking at the fruit of what they're doing and you think, that's not God who's talking to you right there, my friend. How many times have people, you hear them say it and like the idea, you're like, oh, that is not what is being pressed out in front of you. And that's not the option.
Well, I mean, what's weird about all this is that, I typically have a pretty good introspective look of people. I don't think that everyone that goes to prison is a bad guy. I don't think that gang members are necessarily bad people.
Right.
I spend a lot of time in those areas, kind of mentoring up, pulling off the scarlet letter. So I've worked in those areas for, 15 years. And same with police. I have friends that are police. My brother was murdered by a police officer. So, and not that long ago, if you do it by math. And so I usually have a really healthy view of it, but I look at the FBI as this extension of a government that frankly is institutionally rotted. The same way I look at judges. I mean, I've come into contact with a couple great judges. I know a couple great judges, but for you start seeing what happened to President Trump and what happened to other people around me, Tina Peters, it's really difficult to get to a place where you just trust that apparatus is not institutionally taken.
Well, we always say it here, this is familiar to my audience and it'll be something your audience can walk with as well. But the fact of the matter is I think that government is the worst solution to every problem, including when it's the only solution to the problem. And as long as you remain in that knowledge where you realize that the institutions of men will fail you, even despite the best efforts, then you find that operation from a place of sort of sanity. Otherwise, I'm the solution. Now, what's interesting is a lot of folks were looking at Donald Trump as like the solution when in fact he's maybe a vehicle to give you the solution. So I want to talk about the speed of government. It's what I named today's episode over on my channel. And so let's talk about the speed of government, because one of the things that you and I started talking about last night as we're sitting up and we should have been sleeping, but we weren't, is that the executive orders and the speed of government movement right now is not common. It is not the speed that people have ever experienced. So I'm going to relay a message from a friend of mine. Longtime government employee, military veteran, honorable person, a good FBI agent by every account, and one of the ones that was doing the job in the right way for the right reasons with very good roadblocks in. Zach said something at the end of the episode yesterday that I actually took as the biggest compliment. It's going to surprise people a little bit. The biggest compliment to me is when someone says, I don't agree with everything Kyle says, because that just acknowledges a simple truth. If you agree with everything I say, what are you doing? There's something wrong with you. Like, if you are listening to my voice and you're like, everything that comes out of Kyle's mouth, that's what I go with. We are not the same, because I will disagree with myself on a regular basis. So he said, I don't agree with everything Kyle says. This is the most common thing I see from folks that are following me on social media and that are following our podcast, the comments all the time. Assume that I believe that already. Whenever you make it, you don't even tell me that you don't agree with everything. I hope you don't. I want you to be challenged. I want you to challenge me. This is the way that our friendship is supposed to work, right? So I don't agree with everything Kyle says, but you've got to say this. He reached out and asked, how can I help you? And he never asked for anything back. That is the only way that I know how to operate. It's the way that I've seen you operate. You've never been like, hey man, can you do these things for me? Not once. I've offered some things and some things I've done, and vice versa, right? Like there are things that you've done for me. It's always got to be that important little space where you just say, how can I serve? I sat at a table last night with a guy who was a Marine veteran, he's a pilot, really nice guy, friend of a friend, someone I've met at SHOT Show last time, 2 years ago. And he said, when I was growing up, men knew that their job was to serve, that he came out of a class of men that were pulled out in front of his church, and they all were given a cross that they were going to take overseas when they served in the Marine Corps, and they went to Iraq. And they did things that were bad because of the way that the war was set up, but not that their service was not dishonorable, because the service they did, they went there in good faith. And like, how many times do we see, it's like, is if you show up and you mean to do it in the right way. This is the silly thing that Chris Ray always talks about. You show up in good faith, you try to do the right thing. You may not always be part of a good, mechanism. You may be part of a machine that is doing things that are evil. But as long as you are there in good faith and attempting to do the best, it will shine through at some point. Zach is the example of that from yesterday. This pilot I spoke to, that service attitude, as long as you lean that way, you will trend towards the right direction and we'll all have our own failings. But it's just incredible to me. A lot of men in my generation, late 30s, early 40s, that's kind of what I'm running around with a lot right now. I see this. And I think men before this knew it instinctively, but for some reason, my generation might be the last one that really got it. And there are a lot of young people out there that are not catching on that your job is to serve. It's not about what can you get from government service. So the speed of government, again, that's the kind of the thing that I'm looking at. The speed of government is how fast? How is it? Fast or slow?
It's very slow. The wheels of justice turn even slower.
Ridiculously slow. It's like, oh, we have a great idea. We're going to go to a committee, which is going to authorize a study, which is going to get consultants, who is going to come back with a report. And then we are going to have a hearing on the report, and we are going to basically do nothing. Most of us experience that with the Weaponization Committee, especially guys like Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle and Marcus Allen and, various whistleblowers who have come forward and testified. They've talked about having Zach on doing that, who was on yesterday. You'll go forward and have a hearing. What is the result of all hearings, Joe? Result of all hearings? Nothing. Yeah, you know something. Right. You know something, but there's no accountability. There's never any sort of mechanism for the stick to actually reach the person that did something wrong. It doesn't move like that. But people like, Steve Bannon and others, that say, I'm not going to come testify. Those are the guys that are thrown in jail. So it not only moves slowly, but there's no parity. I talked about this last night. One of the reasons why I think what you're doing is so effective when you talk about government. And I know that you bring a lot of sticks. Zach brings less sticks. I'll just say he brings less sticks to the table because he's a patient person. You bring parity. You bring an equalization of leadership inside the government because you have institutional knowledge with the people. And every brick that you take away, you bring them down to a level that the people can see the rot of the individual in those environments, the public servant. I feel like the speed of government, which is slow and grinding and frustrating, especially for a guy like me, because I came in and it's like, hey, are we here to collect? I actually had this pitch. You don't know this, but one of the first things that was said to me when I was at the FBI Academy, I was assigned to a counterintelligence unit, which is like the death of action. It's just a slow, it's a congressional hearing. It's grab information for its own sake and do nothing with it. And the SAC of the Washington field office, who was doing CI, he came to my class and he spoke and he said, you guys are going to go out there. And this is the funniest thing, because I saw James O'Keefe kind of parroting this kind of nonsense. It's like, he said, he goes, you guys are going to come out there and you're going to catch spies. We're going to collect scalps. And I was like, let's freaking go, man. Let's go catch scalps. Let's go find the people that are the enemies of America, that want to sell out my country, that want to take our intellectual property, that want to move classified technologies or compromise our officials with money or leverage, and let's find them and let's sniff them out and let's take their scalps and stick them on the wall. I was like, let's do it. And I got to the field office and it took me about 8 hours to decide that was not what the job was. That is not the job. It is sold that way, which is how you get guys like me, how you get guys like Garrett, how you get guys like Zach to step forward. Quieter people in the analytical space like Marcus Allen will step forward, prayerful, thoughtful men that want to do the right thing. They're sold something, which is why when you heard Zach talking about the academy, I actually let him go long form in the academy because he was an instructor there. And if you want to understand how an institution is, look at how they train their new incoming people. Well, he said that's all changed too. He said that it started off one way, it turned into a place where it was basically trying to wash people out, which means you're going to get a lot of bad. I'd never heard that. And so I always learn something from people. And the idea that the tool was misused, that it was basically designed to be a formative process, and they tried to use it as a selective tool. Never heard that before. That is fantastic stuff. So the audience will go forward and we'll continue to use that analogy because I know it to be true. Once he said it, I was like, of course. This is why having different voices with people who don't agree with you all the time is so important. I don't need agreement. What I need is your thoughts on the same matter and whatever perspective and experience you bring to it. And can that open my eyes to something that I've also seen, but haven't done that analysis in the same way? So the speed of government is slow. The speed of the work that I did there was slow. The guy that reached out to me yesterday, who was leaving me voicemails while I'm walking around at SHOT Show, and I'm listening, and I'm like, he said, I have never seen anything like what has happened in, let's say, the last 72 hours. What day is it today? It's 23rd, 3 days after he was put in. It's Thursday, January the 23rd. Donald Trump was sworn in 72 hours ago. Is that about right? Yeah. I mean, the amount of movement. Actually, CNN did this. So we usually start with CNN's homepage. So let me just go to CNN's homepage because it's so funny. The opening statement, folks, I'll just give you the update of the meta coverage I like to do. Donald Trump sends shockwaves through the government and around the world. That's the headline. And that shockwave is a disruptive force coming in and doing things that he said at the speed of like people who are doing a hostile takeover. It's something I shared with Kash Patel. Whether he takes it or not is irrelevant. The analogy is the same. The folks in federal government right now are experiencing a hostile takeover, and they're also witnessing a counterinsurgency movement. It turns out that the American veterans who've gone overseas and fought know exactly what this looks like. The hostile takeover is like an invasion. You're coming in hard. It was always, it was shock and awe, right? We did that in Iraq, whether it was we needed to be there or not. Shock and awe. But then what's the second piece of it? You remember what the counterinsurgency move was always called hearts and minds. We're in the hearts and minds phase at the same time. He's rolling in hard and fast, trying to seize the mechanisms, freezing the things that need to freeze, eliminating some of the fat. And it's not all going to get fixed. But the people who are in the government are so used to this, like where they just, you know the joke about the Canadian soldier who comes back and gets a job with the government?
No.
Should I tell you?
Yes.
You might use this somewhere. All right. So folks, here's the joke. It's kind of one of those silly things. Guy goes to Afghanistan. He's a Canadian Army. He has an IED explosion. He's working with a thing on patrol, and the shrapnel basically comes up and it hits his testicles and it hits his lower abdomen. And so he needs to have a chunk of his colon removed, and his testicles are removed. It's the only thing they can keep. They had to do some amputation, so he's able to save his life. So the guy is able to live, but he's a disabled veteran. He comes back home, honorable service. And just like in America, the Canadian government offers a bonus or a bump up in consideration so that if you're a military veteran and you're qualified, you're more likely to get the job than not. So he goes in and he applies for this job with the Postal Service. And they said, your resume looks really good. Can you confirm kind of the details of your service? Kind of want to chat with you for a little bit. So they do. And so the hiring manager, he says, you have any questions for me? And he said, yeah, I actually do. Can you tell me a little bit about what this job involves? And he said, well, it's a real typical government job. It's 9 to 5. So we expect you in the morning at 9 o'clock. We go home at quitting time. It's 5 p.m. And, we push paperwork. We do a lot of logistics. We do a lot of sort of like administrative work to make sure that the mail gets where it needs to go and so on and so forth. And so he says, great. And he says, well, how am I looking as far as a candidate? And the guy says, well, you're a military veteran. You have honorable service. You get along with everybody here. Like we're happy to have you.
No, where this is going. Okay.
And he said, when can you start? He said, well, I could start as early as Monday. And so the hiring manager looks at him. He says, great. Well, here's the deal. We will see you. We'll see you at 11 o'clock on Monday. And he said, 11 o'clock. I thought you said this was a 9 to 5 job. And he said, well, I didn't say it was a government job. And that means that from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, all we do is drink coffee and scratch our nuts. And since you seem to have some intestinal problems and you don't have any nuts anymore, there's no reason for you to get here before 11. Right? That's the government. That was the joke that we used to talk about when I was working counterintelligence. We get a hot lead coming in on the CI side and they'd say, hey, listen, like this one's burning hot. You guys got to go do something about it. And it would come in on a Friday, like at noon. And you'd go, oh man, that is a smoking hot lead. Like we got to do something. All right, we're going to handle this first thing on Monday. I mean, after we bullshit with each other and have coffee, obviously. But sometime around lunchtime on Monday, we're going to get right on this. That speed of government is common. It's time consuming. It's slow. It's methodical. There's not a lot of instinct or what I would call a sense of urgency. If you guys have been in the military, you know what I'm talking about. Even law enforcement probably has that sense of urgency, like someone's relying on you. People in the government don't think that way, oftentimes. And the ones that do, the guys like me, like I want to get stuff done. And we're seeing Donald Trump do things like hundreds of executive orders. Is that the way to rule? Probably not. We got to be real. Like these are all going to get swapped over if another team comes into power. So the question is, can you do that invasion? And at the same time, win the hearts and minds of these people and say, look, let's go back to service. Like go back to serving the American people. Why are you looking for a way? We're hearing reports inside the FBI right now that they're trying to stop the telework move. Did you hear about this?
Yeah. They're calling it something different.
They're calling it something different. So folks, if you watched on the inauguration, one of the first things Donald Trump did, day one, he said, American government workers are going to come back and work in person in the office. And so they issued a decree and the executive order says this. Do you have the executive order? I actually want to know what the language is. If you can find it.
Let me find it real quick.
When you look for that, the FBI has said, well, if they're going to end remote work, and it must be in person, then we're just not going to call it remote work where people are working from home. So think about that. Think about the sort of audacity of having the House, the Senate, and the White House all in alignment. We're close enough, saying that we want to come in, we want to see something better happen. And then we're going to try to subvert the first day's work that the president comes in to do, where he says you cannot work from home anymore, you must show up in person. So what they're doing, just so you guys understand, because this is very clear, and President Trump can fix this in like with a stroke of a pen. The FBI specifically, but I'm certain other elements of the government are looking at it and saying, well, remote work, Joe, is when you are assigned to work in Denver, but you are doing that work from Las Vegas, Nevada, like we're doing today. We are doing remote work for this podcast. Okay?
Probably more work than they do in the federal government. And
that's obviously the case. But consider that what we are doing is called remote work. And Donald Trump said you can't do that. What most people do in the government is what they call telework. Now, most of you that are listening to this would not make a distinction between remote work and telework. But telework means that you live, let's say, in the Denver area. You live outside of Austin, Texas, and you are working from home, and your office is down the street from you in the place that you're in. So you're not remotely working from a different area of operations. You are teleworking in the same area, and therefore you are not covered by the edict. What does it say right there? Does it say the words remote work?
No, it says return to in-work person. Remote work. Terminate remote work arrangements and require employees to return. So it says heads of all departments and agencies in the executive branch of government shall, as soon as practicable, take all necessary steps to terminate remote work arrangements and require employees to return to work in person at their respective duty stations on a full-time basis, provided the department and agency heads shall make exemptions they deem necessary. This memorandum shall be implemented consistent with applicable law.
And so what they've said is the attorneys sitting inside the FBI and also in other parts of the government have said, well, we're not doing remote work. Remote work is when you are working from another geographic region. We are doing telework, and telework is not defined by this executive order. Do you guys realize that the subversion is they are looking for a way to not do the thing that was very obvious? Would you assume that remote and telework are the same thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're a regular person.
Well, I'm a normal person. I'm a regular person.
This is the kind of stuff that teenagers do with their parents. They're like, well, you said I couldn't take the car, but I just took the truck and I went out for a ride.
But you know why this is a great thing?
Tell me.
Because President Trump is going to use this as an indicator of who he can and cannot trust to actually follow orders. Yeah. And he's just going to start lobbing heads.
Well, the funny thing is this. They think they pulled a fast one. So they've identified who they are. This is the best part. I agree with you. The second thing is that it's like, oh man. So Don and I were talking about this yesterday. Very, very simple. If you can assume that your opponent, I had this conversation with my father as well. If you can assume that the opponent, if the person that's disagreeing with you, the person that's subverting your will, is actually operating in good faith, even when you know they're not, right?
Yeah.
That's how the Socratic method can be worked. It's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that you guys call it telework. I mean telework as well. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Now all telework, all employees who are assigned to offices must physically report to the offices that they are assigned to, regardless of where they stay. The only exceptions can be approved by exception, blah, 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 agency head. You assume that they're not doing this to subvert the will, even though we probably believe that they're not. You basically argue against your own position. You say, my instinct, because this is both of our instinct, is like, you're screwing with me. I know you are. So I'm going to crush you. It's not a Christian thing to do. It turns out it's actually not very effective at bringing people back in line either. You just go, oh man, my apologies. That's my mistake. Allow me to fix this. I meant this. And thank you for bringing this up by obviously telework didn't apply to you because we didn't say anything about telework. That's our mistake. We're going to fix that. Straighten them out. Let them comply. Because the other thing you'll find is that a lot of people don't want to go back in the office, period, which is why they did that behavior, and they will self-eliminate. And it's a lot easier to have government employees quit and leave than it is to have them fired.
So case in point, let me just say, this is not just a government work environment problem.
Oh, yeah.
So I took back over my companies in November of 2023, walked in after being gone for nearly 3 years. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I walked in systematically, met with all the heads of all the different companies, said, here's my directives. Here are the things we're going to do. Our performance is bad in these 6 or 7 areas. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll do better. Right. And I was like, no, I need a strategic plan from each one of you on what we're going to do to be better. Met with all the employees, a friend of mine came to me and said, Joe, who's in the company, said, Joe, you gotta come in slow because you come in hard and fast.
Right.
And I was like, listen, here's the deal. First thing I did, no more work from home. Okay. Everybody in the office, either in the office or I'll take it as your resignation. So I walked in and did that. I had a couple of people that said, I'm going to quit. Okay, no problem. See you later. And some of them have been with me for years. Mm-hmm. But this infection that happened with work from home literally cut down on productivity. You saw, Amazon, all these other companies that have said, hey, you're not going to be in the office. You're going to be in the office or resign.
Apple had a big piece with this too in the Austin area where they built these huge campuses. And it's like, hey, come back into work. And they're like, that's not what this is about. It's like, no, those are the terms of your employment.
But Kyle, 9 months. I took a very patient approach. I did what you said. Okay, maybe you misunderstood me. Let me draw you a picture. I got crayons on me. I'm literally on the board. Home, work. Here's you and I did this in a little car.
Little ... I
drew the little car and I was like, vroom, vroom, here. Yeah. And so we're going to start at 8:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And by the way, if your work's not done at 5:00, you're going to stay maybe till 6.
What if they're a war veteran and they don't have intestines and testicles?
Well, then they're probably not working for me.
Okay, fair enough.
Because they don't have testicles. Now, if they have a war injury, I do have, Tig works for me. And actually, that's not true because Tig doesn't have any balls either. Oh, sorry, Tig. I'm just kidding. I didn't say that out loud.
What kind of disclosures are coming out? That's crazy.
All right.
So understood. Yeah, there's only so much. You can coddle people. This is the coddling period is all I'm saying.
I did it for 9 months.
Yep.
I hope he does it for 30 days.
I agree.
Right? And then they said, well, we have exceptions. I'll make exceptions. I said, okay, make exceptions.
Right.
Exceptions was 70% of my workforce.
That's too many.
I was like, oh,
that's the rule.
Oh, they're playing with me now. Oh, now they're playing with me. Okay. All right. Yeah. That 9 months and 1 day, I fired 29 people, almost 10% of my workforce. Mm-hmm. I was like, choppy. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's on a tear. Oh, I'm not done. I fired the heads of all the companies, not because they were bad people. One was a good friend of mine, but because you get in this place where you're stuck. And I go, look, you can't get me. What you are as a infant, it's not the same as a teenager, it's not the same as an adult. Yes. People in different stages of your company have the same effect. And so you get another month or two in, people still tried me on. You're fired. It became literally, I felt like I was just walking around like, hey, how you doing? You're fired. You're okay though.
Isn't that what people wanted from Donald Trump?
So like sweating. People were walking. They were like, do I still have a job? I was like, are you performing? Are you in the office? Are you taking care of our clients?
Right.
I said, here are the things that I expect. You can't do it. You can't be here. I'm sorry. I love you. I want you to have the same feeling leaving here as you did coming in. I had people there for 8, 9, 10 years that worked for me. Gone. And I don't feel bad about it. Our performance went up by nearly 300%.
Believe that?
Our revenue went up astronomically, and the client satisfaction went through the roof because now people knew if the customer got to me, if our client got to me, you don't have a job. Yeah. So that's the same expectation I get.
Here's why I think that this is going to be effective. This is the same thing we do in law enforcement when you bring somebody into custody. Okay. There's 3 phases of it.
You put them in cuffs.
You do put them in cuffs, but how do we do that? We go about it with 3 stages. They teach us at every academy. The first thing we do is we ask you, can you please come back to work? Mm-hmm. All remote work is now canceled. It's time for you to come back and work in the office. That's the ask part. The second stage is called tell. Tell is different than ask. This is important with your kids too. I experience it with my toddlers. It's like, I've asked you to do something. Now I am telling you, this is not an option. You must do this. And you know what? You're right. I had some language problems. I didn't communicate it perfectly. So allow me to make no mistake about this. Everybody who has this job will come into a government seat in a government building and will be sitting butt in seat with minimal exceptions. That's the tell. And the last one is the make. Now, in the custody thing, that means you're about to deal with like probably some physical force, something on the continuum of force, from tasing, from just hands-on, whatever. It's going to get ask, tell, make. We're at the tell fit stage. It's going fast. That is not common in government. Usually the ask stage is 4 years. And then the next 4 years, if you get a chance in the presidency, is the tell stage. And there is never a make stage. We don't ever see that. This is why I think it's really fun. And this is why my friend who reached out to me is seeing something in the government that nobody knows how to deal with. The key to doing the ask, tell, make is that you have to follow up with a make. There must be a make. People have to see the physical experience. You know how this works? It goes like this. I've actually seen this in the ER. We'll have it's actually really hilarious when a woman gets tased that is getting really mouthy with a cop, gets physical with a cop and didn't have any business doing that. There's something very satisfying about a mean, obnoxious, especially when they abuse their kid and we're dealing with their kid in the emergency room. So you're an abusive parent. You want to tell the cops what to do. You roll in and the cop just goes zap and drops them. And you watch them fall like a stone. They just fall. And the guy who's standing there next to that woman who was bowing up as well and thought he was going to go after the cop, he turns around and goes, "No, I'm good. I'm going to sit right back down here and wait patiently." Sometimes when you get one person in the make face, you don't have to even tell the next person. You can go back to ask. And people right now are so spinning. My buddy is telling me that in multiple agencies that he deals with, and these are all intelligence agencies for your guys' awareness, he said nobody even knows how to process the speed and the veracity and the velocity of what's coming out of the White House with these executive orders. So he's doing something. It's really important. He's staging that landing on the beach and they're grabbing territory. So the casualty might be like, oh, well, they're going to get away with some shenanigans right now because the language is not right.
They're not taking it serious.
They're going to take more territory than not. I'm so optimistic in a way that I haven't been. Like, I realized when I was taking a shower this morning that my neck is tightened up because even since the inauguration, like, it's like, what is coming for us? I haven't seen the change, but I'm watching this activity and it's a time of chaos. And I think Trump's actually using it, which is cool, but it is very uncommon. What I do know is that the folks that are in the government do not know how to process this speed because the speed of government does not agree with the mechanisms and the tools that Donald Trump has been using. He did more EOs in his first day than Joe Biden did in the first, 100 days?
Yeah.
By like 4x. There's no way to process that for the government mind. It's giving us a chance that I don't think anybody has seen before.
Kyle, we have this reminds me, we have 87 days in which to get rid of machines and mail-in ballots. We have 87 days. Preach
on this. This is your big thing.
Yeah.
People should hear it. My audience does not hear this from me regularly. So go ahead.
So let me just explain something to you. Everybody's like, I don't want the inconvenience of it. There's two things that are important in every government institution, right? And that is transparency and security.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't have either one of those in government at all.
Yes.
But the biggest thing, the most important thing that we saw in this election is people saw the direction of the country going the wrong way. Right. Well, we have captured radical individuals in different states that use the apparatuses of the election. And I don't care what you say. You say the elections were stolen. I'm a system architect. Don't talk to me about the fact that the systems weren't stolen because I have researched them. I have built models, and my model was relevant on January 5th when I went to Washington, 2021, and said, here's how they're going to steal the Senate runoff race. And I was accurate with such precision. They came to me and said, how did you know? I was like, well, I'm a system architect, number one. Actually, that's not what I said. I said, I'm clairvoyant.
I knew that was coming.
Right. So, but my point is I walked through this process and I've been spending the last 3 years is very consistently talking about election fraud. The election systems allow for the black box to run everything for the people. They are not. Since 2000 and probably, 8, we have not had free and fair elections. We've had kabuki theater. Mail-in ballots have no transparency. They basically go through the USPS, which is a partisan hack organization that can't even get your mail right, but they sure as hell can actually ship entire pallets of ballots to a backroom deal with Runback and all these other organizations so that they can actually count ballots in the dead of night and basically switch votes. The machines themselves have this thing called the adjudication process. Obviously, I came forward about Eric Coomer because I was on that Antifa call. It had nothing to do with elections. I was trying to protect my community from this COVID hoax. It exists, but it's not the.
Yeah, that wasn't the thing you were worried about
afterwards. So if you get down to how do you eliminate a system by which an organ by which in the country they have captured positions of trust in leadership across the country and did so quietly. We weren't paying attention. Everybody said, oh, everyone's going liberal. It's not true. You can look at and by the way, we have data on nearly everyone in the country.
Well, we can get even broader than that because I know you spend a lot of time overseas. What is the first thing you do to establish integrity in an election system if you're going to quote unquote export democracy into a new country?
You get rid of electronics, number one. Number two,
you have to have same day, in person, one person, one vote, and it's on paper and the boxes have to be countable. They have to be auditable. There has to be a paper trail.
I'd relent against that for two reasons. One, the American people's lives are so complicated. The average person works about 52 hours a week. right?
How much time are they working?
1.3 hours. Yeah, I agree with that. But at the same time, we also travel a lot. There's a lot of people that are flying from one state to the next. And one day will disenfranchise a lot of people. So I will relent to early voting for 2 weeks inside of a precinct, at a precinct level, on paper, that is hand counted and re-verified using a tabulation system, right? And that way you make sure that you're checking the accuracy with a bipartisan group of people that you pay a crap load of money to.
Yeah.
Pay these people that actually sit in the precincts for those 2 weeks $40 an hour. And you're like, I can't pay $40 an hour.
If people knew how much they were wasting on some of these
$100 million contracts, right?
What would be the mechanism that Donald Trump could execute this idea? Is it something that can be done nationally? Because as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is not my forte, but it does seem that the elections are supposed to be all carried out at a state level. So how does the federal end of it play into this solution? If we're dealing with this flurry of executive orders, and he seemed to have no problem to do the Barack Obama, I got a pen and I got a phone, like who's he calling and what is he writing and signing that makes this a possibility for DJT? I feel like you have like a whole white paper on this.
I wrote a white paper.
I may or may not have read the white
paper. I wrote a white paper and I wrote a bluff.
But I may or may not have been able to keep track of it.
And I was commissioned to do this. I'm like, I wrote this up and so, and I went through historical points and I wrote out what President Trump had to do in the first 90 days.
Yep.
And I'll publish it. I meant to publish it before I sent it to President Trump and I put it on X. And then I got suppressed on X because they truly love me. This is the third time I've been canceled by them. Hopefully I don't get canceled this time. I'm trying to be nice. But I walked through this entire deal. I know it's crazy.
It's not going to work. You're not going to be nice.
And I talked about the things that President Trump has the authority to do. Now I used legal scholars. I used a program that, called LexisNexis, which is an AI program to tell me whether or not it's possible, whether this is illegal to do. And then I cited in the white paper, which is, now nearly 250 pages. Here are the steps you have to take from an architectural standpoint in order to make this happen. Now, you said states have their own sovereignty in elections. Well, that is semi-true. We have the HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, which we instituted years ago that basically set standards for security in the country. We, since that was signed, have not followed any of the HAVA requirements. None. Zero.
Got it.
It was meant to modernize what we do inside of election systems. Well, that didn't happen. So, and the other thing is that states actually are not in a position where they have sovereignty completely. They have sovereignty on the local and state level. They do not have sovereignty when it comes to federal elections.
Okay.
The federal government, for people that are going to serve at a leadership level that affects every part of, or every person in the country.
Hold on. Let me drill into this.
Yeah.
State representative, congressional representatives in the federal offices.
Yes.
They're representing me in the state. So that's a federal position, but it's really a state position because they come from the state. You're talking about vice president and president are the ones that are federal
Congress
only?
Too.
So how does that play? Because they are representing the individuals of the state in theory.
In theory, they are, but at a federal level. In other words, their representation is basically in the government making the rules. As a legislative body, they're making the rules that affect everyone across the country by consensus.
Can people find this white paper out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Because some people will want to read this.
Yeah.
What's the easy place to find it?
So the white paper will not, until President Trump has the white paper in his possession, he won't have it. I'll put the bluff out, which is 7 pages, which is a pretty good analysis of what I'm asking to do. And if you'll let me, I'll read off what I'm asking.
Hit some high points.
Okay. So the executive order for election security is what I'm telling what executive action based on authority he has. Okay. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Don't even play one on TV. Right. But smart people like
you also didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn last night. You actually slept in a shed.
It literally is. They call it a cabana. It's a cabana.
I don't know, man.
It looks like a Home Depot.
It looks like a shed. Is that?
It's actually nice.
This is why I don't like traveling, because whenever you land, it's like, oh, like the hotel's nice. You're like, the hotel's not that nice. Or you're like, oh, I'm sleeping in a shed in the yard, and that was Joe last night.
That was
for the
last
last 2 nights.
For sure.
Going.
So I said this. I said the action. In light of the critical lack of security and transparency in U.S. elections, presidents should declare a national emergency under the authority of the National Emergencies Act and the International Emergencies Economic Powers Act. Because keep in mind, everything that we do collectively as consensus affects foreign policy, not just domestic policy. Domestic policy. So that number one, authorize immediate reforms, temporary mandate the implementation of voter ID, paper ballot usage, and precinct level counting with manual verification to ensure that immediate security of the voting process. Establish a federal task force, which is crazy that I'm asking them to do something more.
Right.
Create an interagency task force to oversee election security, including representatives from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the Election Assistance Commission to monitor and enforce election integrity measures. enhance cybersecurity, direct federal agencies to improve comprehensive cybersecurity support to state election systems, including audits, penetration testing, and real-time threat monitoring. And you say, well, why do you do that if you're hand counting? You have to have a secondary method by which you can verify the votes.
Okay.
And you have to have a system that pushes it up to the public view so it's transparent. You have public reporting and transparency, or the creation of a federal portal for real-time election results reporting, access to the public to ensure transparency in electoral outcomes. Emergency funding, allocate emergency funds to states for the immediate upgrade of election infrastructure to meet the new standards of security and transparency. Review and oversight, empower the task force to review the potential override state election procedures that do not comply with emergency measures enacted to secure and verify the election process. And this is a big one. Decentralize the election counting facilities.
Okay.
Mandate the decentralization of election counting facilities. Each precinct must have their own counting facility where ballots are processed and counting to include precinct size limitations.
Didn't we used to do that?
This is exactly what we did for hundreds of years. Right? I mean,
so you're adding a little bit of modernization with maybe a backup mechanism, an audit system that's more transparent, which is kind of what the hope of that act would be. This is the problem between like spirit of the law and letter of the law.
Yeah. So if you eliminate 85%, election fraud has been happening for hundreds of years, right?
Sure.
People have been influencing that, in Chicago, they call it getting lunch. You go to Chicago and you walk in, they give you $50, you hand them their ballot, they fill it out the way that they want, you go have lunch.
This is the old, like, here's some walking around money.
Right. And that's been a way that you've basically disenfranchised people in the inner cities for a long time.
Okay.
The same thing like union dues, not joining the union and breaking your kneecaps, right? These are corrupt institutions that have done really bad things that were designed to do really good things previously. So as you go through this and you talk about local control and immediate reporting, so you have precinct level results that are reported immediately. I don't have to wait, right? And I'm relying on the citizenry, the people, so you're returning the power back. Parity. Remember that parity thing?
Yeah.
You get leadership that's elected by the people, and you're creating immediate parity.
That word parity you're using for the lay version of that, or the visual, is that most people have this experience that governmental leaders of every level are just inaccessible.
Yeah.
They're operating in a place where there's no way to touch them. And the parity aspect is to basically bring them to a level where you know individually who they are, you can understand and you have access to who those people are, and you have the ability to affect the policy decisions they make in the way that they were actually supposed to represent you. So if you're one of 50,000 constituents, then you are actually a voice that matters in that 50,000, because how many people care? A third of them. So you're now part of a group that can actually access them. If you think that you can't, because whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons why you may not be able to, that parity issue, that's where people throw their hands and give up. A lot of people give up because it's like, well, there's no access. There's no ability to do this. How do we change this? I do think that's the speed of government thing. I think it's intentional.
Yeah.
It's like, I know how busy you are, Joe. I've actually seen how busy you are. People have a sense of how busy I might be, and they can think in their own life. It's like, how much time do you have to dedicate to any one given thing? How much time are you going to be able to sit there and solve long-term problems that are not going to be fixed with a rapid flurry of results? The speed of government is meant to dissuade you. The VA does this really well. They go, oh, thanks so much for submitting your request for a disability rating. We're going to evaluate this. We're going to get back to you in like 6 to 25 weeks. And you're like, 6 to 25 weeks? How the hell long is that? And so half a year later, they might get back to you. And they go, yeah, we've adjudicated it, but we have some additional tests we'd like to run. If we can run the clock out on your attention span, then you're never going to get where you want to go. And so the speed of government is actually designed to make you disengage from the process, because most people are like, hey, dude, I need to eat today. I need to pick a restaurant now, or I need to go and make something in my kitchen. I'm going to solve that problem because I am hungry now, and by the end of this thing, I will not be hungry.
Right.
In the situation, which is why we're in the short, compressed timeline, it's like, if we can just run the clock out on fixing election problems, or the FBI, or anything else, the DOD and the manners in which we give contracts, if we could just run the clock out on people paying attention to it, they'll settle into like the mean tweets thing again. They'll get back in the old rhythm. Yeah. In the counseling world, where my wife came from, one of the things they talk about is like basically defaulting to patterns in your family of origin. Like the way that you deal with your siblings, let's say, is the way that you'll almost always deal with them, unless you can break that pattern. The thing that we're seeing in these first, let's say, 72 hours, the first 1 week of DJT coming in, 2.0, is he's disrupting that status quo. He's changing the relationship because they're on the back foot for the first time. Generally speaking, government is, man, I used to do this. I used to go and do payment requests. This was the worst thing I ever did in the Bureau. I'd want to get paid back for stuff, okay? So I would come in and I would fill out the reimbursement form. I would have to buy something for a source or for work. I'd bring them the reimbursement form and I would slide it across the desk, and I shit you not. There's no other way to say that. There was nobody there, Joe. The desk was unoccupied while I was standing there. There were 2 women that worked in that office, and they had their back to me on Facebook. They're like clicking away. One of them weighs 400 pounds. Is that relevant to the story? Maybe. I don't know. A 400-pound government employee that works with a cane that's on Facebook when she should be receiving my document to pay me back because it's my money.
Right.
That used to piss me off. So here I am. I'm filing my form. I would look over and they had the little service ding bell. Ding. She finished typing her Facebook post.
This is a real thing?
This is a real thing. This really happened like more than once. This is the best. This is the best example of how they get you to disengage from the process. Okay, this is a perfect microcosm. Ding! Ring the little bell. She stands up. She grabs her cane because she's got one of those 4-post cane at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And she hobbles over. Not quickly. Not even fast for a disabled person. And she gets over and she looks at my form. She has a few questions, the answers to which are on the sheet of paper, which I have given her, but she's actually asking me things instead of reading them, making me say them back to her, which I've already spent the time filling out the form. And she takes this, she puts it in a file, and 3 weeks later, they did the reimbursement.
3 weeks later.
They paid my friend, though, instead of me.
What?
They paid my friend because my friend requested the same amount of money 5 days prior, so they paid him whatever it was, $152.48. And then 3 weeks later, they paid him again $152.48 because we had the same charge because we bought the same thing for the same group of for the same work. So they just paid him twice. And when I brought it to their attention, I'm like, "Hey, lady, this is perfect government. This is the perfect microcosm." I went to her and I said, "Listen, I gave you a form for reimbursement. You paid my friend Miles. How do you want to fix this?" And she said, "Well, you can submit another form saying that the payment was done improperly. Then he can verify and attest with a third form. He can say that it was improperly paid. Then what we'll do is a debit against his account. We'll retract that amount of money. Then we will have you reprocess a brand new form saying what the reimbursement amount should be, like a brand new one. Then we'll go through the process. Then we will pay you, and then we'll be square, like in a year or something like that." And I said, "I have a better idea. Why don't you write me an email acknowledging that you mispaid the wrong person? Send it to me and to Miles. I'll go to Miles and he'll write me a check because he's my friend. And then I will have the money back. And that way they know we're not doing anything untoward and you guys will be clear. It'll just be an email in the file and you can add it to the freaking thing as an addendum." And she's like she had an aneurysm right there. And she no longer works because she just died.
She died?
No, she didn't die. I'm just
okay. She's 400 pounds. But I thought she went on those Ozempic or something.
Yeah, she should. This idea that it's like, hey, how about the right solution is you created another line. Let's not make a big circle squiggly thing. Let's just complete the triangle and bring it back where it needs to go. Just send a message to both of us and let's close that leg off. Let's give me the $152 that you owed me a month ago. He'll just write me a check. This is not hard. I just don't want to look like we're doing something untoward. I don't want you guys to I don't need more paperwork. If they can slow you down long enough, then eventually they just won't do anything.
And you forget about it.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, well, I've just moved on. It's only $152, which turns out that was a lot of money at the time. And most people don't want to be out $152 either. And you sure as hell don't want to be out it to the government when the government paid the wrong money out to the wrong guy. This kind of thing is kind of where I sit. This speed of government, they're hoping they'll do the same thing when it comes to elections. And I think this is why you've been beating this drum. I mean, you've been telling me I have no ability to affect it, but I do love that you're like, "Kyle, we got to fix the election." And I'm like, yeah. We all have the thing that we are passionate about. This is supposed to be the brilliance of our system, that our attention span can be focused, but it has to actually happen within time or we're going to lose it.
So let me tell you something. And when you're dealing with complex problems related to structures, right? There's a thing called XBML, business model language. So the business model language and the study of holons within holons, systems within systems, means that the 400-pound woman could make a decision that could adversely affect something that's happening in a different department because they made a change, right? And so it's called capacity analysis. So you basically are putting oil in a swimming pool that was meant to hold water, and so you get fissures and cracks. And sooner or later, that oil is going out at a higher rate than you can put oil in it in order to hold it. And so when you look at problems and symptoms, the government is really good at servicing the symptom because it elongates the sustainability of that particular problem that gives them a job, gives them a purpose, right? So nobody ever really wants to solve the problem. President Trump comes in, he wants to solve the problem, seals up the symptoms. You no longer need those organizations. And so it cuts those things out. In essence, that is what we are dealing with. When you cut to the problem, here's the problem, here's a solution to fix the problem, we're done, right?
I'm gonna say the same thing in a different way. most people want to address the symptoms like they are the root cause.
Yes.
The situation that needs to be solved is like, what is the outcome? What is the mission you are attempting to achieve? This is the disconnect that government often always has. If you ask government employees, it's like, what do you do? It's like, well, I process the forms that Joe gives me so that I can do the reimbursements for the things he had to spend money on. It's like, no, you don't. You're part of a larger organization that has a mission. And if you understand that the mission exists and then your job has to be some part of moving the mission forward, you can have success. This is the reason why companies have mission statements. This is the reason why it's a really big deal when an agency in the federal government that's supposed to do law enforcement tells you that their most important thing is diversity or having an inclusive environment for the workers. Who gives a rat's? Nobody should. The goal is how do you prosecute federal crime so that the American people can live in safety?
Correct.
Relative safety.
Right.
This is what it's supposed to be. If you don't understand where you fit in that mechanism, my buddy would say this. George Hill has come in and said this a bunch of times. He's like, hey, look, real simple. You come in as a department head, same problem you have with your company. Tell me how your department furthers the mission of this agency. If you can't do that extemporaneously off the top of your head and give a simple, coherent 2-minute answer to what it is that your group and the people that work for you do to further the overall mission of your agency, you don't need to exist. And if your thing is like, well, we pay the prices and we help aggregate the data, we move the ballots from this to this. No. It's like we offer the following thing. We are a mechanism that transmits the will of the American people into the action, showing who is going to represent them in government. If you don't know that that's what your job is, get the hell out. DJT's bringing a new thing. Like I say, I'm actually flabbergasted because I expected a very slow 18 months. We were still going to be hoping for some of the things. This guy's like pardoning people on day one.
213 executive orders.
He's punching out more orders than somebody's done. Like in their, yeah, just a machine.
Yeah.
And as was brought up the other day, I'm tanked. He's probably getting less sleep than I am right now. So like him or hate him, there are plenty of people who hate him. If they can't at least just respect the fact that this guy is absolutely audacious and tenacious when it comes to sitting there and just punching through the wall, he goes and gives, what was that? We were talking about the Rogan podcast the other day. Like we did 4 hours yesterday. We were smoked.
Yes.
Right? And we traveled in. We were like, oh, that was really tiring. Did a 4-hour podcast. And then like for the rest of the day, we're walking zombies. Trump walks in and does the same thing, turns around and does another one, goes gives a speech at a rally. There's something magical about that. And it's not cocaine from everything I can tell. Like that would be the normal explanation for most people is cocaine. And it doesn't, he just runs on pure, whatever it is. It's not common. And that is exceptional. So it'd be funny if the left actually acknowledged that. Like there's something unique. And unlike the first term where we did see a lot of government as usual, we saw Chris Ray's, who were the government kind of picks. He's doing the thing that he said in a way that is actually even surprising to me. Even people that are sort of on the boat, they're like, yeah, we want to see this guy be successful. They are still expecting speed of government.
Right.
We are not seeing that. And frankly, I'm into it. It kind of blows my mind that for all of the, and I'm a pessimist, right? You're a pessimist too. Would you agree?
I'm a pessimistically optimistic person.
You look, like you're happy when the good things happen, but you don't expect them to happen. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not saying you're negative, but a pessimist looks out there and sees, okay, there's some things that are going wrong here. And that's the status quo. The status quo is government doesn't work. Real interesting possibility that someone lit that fire. And I wonder how much of it had to do with what do they call it? The millimeter miracle. I wonder how much of it, because how many people are talking about that today on the left? Like someone shot this guy and hit him in the head.
They're not talking about it at all.
Why not? Why is that not a thing? It's like, man, this guy really had a life-changing experience where he went like, there is not that much time on this earth. How close to death do you have to get when someone died right behind you with a bullet that was meant for you to change your perspective? And I haven't heard a lot of people comment on it. They're like, oh, look, shockwaves. That's what CNN said. Shockwaves.
Oh yeah, they made up a narrative.
How about life-changing event because of radical rhetoric? Put somebody on the roof to pull a trigger trying to kill me. And I've decided that I only have so much time left on this earth and I'm going to do it to do some wild stuff. And I don't want to waste any time because that's what it looks like for me. And the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced he just went, life is short and it almost ended.
But that's what brings me to the next thing, which is this shooting that just happened in Nashville.
Yes.
Yesterday.
Okay.
Which I apologize. I was completely blind to this.
Yeah.
But this shooting from yesterday that I think we should probably at least talk about happened in Nashville. Paulo, I don't know if you want to put that up.
Tell you what, while you're grabbing it, let me, Apollo, if I'll have you throw up the Blackout Coffee. I want to do a quick read for our folks that are sponsored. This is the thing that I miss most about traveling. This is actually my least favorite thing about traveling, Joe, is not having my own coffee. If you can imagine that. So
it's mine too.
Let's run to our sponsor, who's Blackout Coffee. Again, the website is going to be blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. If you do that, you guys will get 20% off. So we're going to read their script that they've given me here on the fly. Let's see what we got. It says, we're about to put something that's going to change the way you start your day. That would be better because we're drinking mediocre coffee. Blackout Coffee. It's not just coffee. It's a wake-up call. It's a call to rise and grind, to push harder and to never compromise on what you stand for. It's not your average cup of Joe. Every bag of Blackout Coffee is roasted with purpose. It's packed with bold flavor and fueled by the kind of values that this country was built on. What we're talking about right now: grit, determination, a refusal to back down, not the speed of government. And they don't just make coffee. They make a statement. Blackout Coffee stepping up, adding more warriors to get your orders out faster than ever. I like the idea of telling your employees that they're warriors. There's something good about that. When you hit the order button, you know there's coffee coming, fresh and ready to fuel your next move. And we have mediocre coffee today here in the Airbnb, so I could use this. Whether you're powering through the daily grind, you're chasing down your big goals, you're trying to change the government, and you actually want to do the job you were hired for, or you're refusing to settle for mediocrity, Blackout Coffee's got your back. Don't just drink coffee. Drink the Blackout Coffee. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. Use the promo code KYLE. Save yourself 20%. There's no Trump tax cuts yet. They haven't signed anything in, so save yourself a couple of bucks while you can. KYLE. Save yourself 20%. blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. You know what's funny? They added the end here. He said, "Let's go." Let's go is the Allahu Akbar of the millennial generation.
Hey, by the way, for those who are listening on Conservative Daily, if you're on the audio version or on the live version, say the link again so you can go buy the coffee.
It's blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle.
All right, go do that. Go buy some coffee.
Do you want to know what's wild?
What?
My listeners started sending me Blackout Coffee.
Really?
They were like, "Hey, where do you live? We want to send you like we want to send you 5-pound bags of coffee." And I'm like,
"Okay, sign me up."
I've got some cool listeners.
Yeah.
You had a big cross. I have a flaming fire pit that hangs out that says "Be suspendable" or "Suspendable." Come and suspend it.
You know what else I got?
Tell me. A Lamborghini.
No.
Okay, good.
I actually did at one point. I did have a Lamborghini. I do have some fast cars.
Yeah. Joe, guys, you got to understand this. Joe asked me if you should buy a Cybertruck. Does your audience know you bought a new one? Have you talked about it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Joe came to my house in a Cybertruck that he had just driven off the lot, which is an interesting thing to do. It's kind of like a gender reveal, but it's like a sexual orientation reveal.
I came to see you in my truck.
I'm just giving him a hard time. He showed up in this truck, and I was like, "That's a weird looking thing." And somebody came up, and they knew that I was buying a new truck soon, and I didn't have it yet. And they're like, "Man, is that your new truck?" And I'm like, "No, dude, like that is not my new truck. That is a wild thing. My power grid could not support the Cybertruck." So he pulls up in the new Cybertruck. Two of my buddies who are electric car aficionados got in. We all sit in. So there's 4 grown men sitting in this heavy freaking tank. You slam the door shut. And you've got the maxed out version? What's it called?
It's a Cyber Beast.
Cyber Beast. Is that the highest speed?
Oh, yeah.
It's stupid. So we get in this thing, which is basically built like a rocket ship. We close the door. This is, I guess Elon is kind of in the news talking about they're like, he's doing Nazi salutes. It's like, dude, he was saying he's borderline autistic. He built this company that makes crazy vehicles that go so fast they make you want to puke.
And that's what he was talking about.
I know. No, he was saying my heart goes out. He was doing this. He said, my heart goes out. He was saying my heart out to you. But he did it with one hand because he's like spastic. Long and short. Joe shows up with this truck in front of my house. We get in it. We turn around. We were able to hit 60 miles an hour on the road that is like between my street and the stop sign, which is maybe like a couple hundred yards.
Yeah.
It's stupid. And it was
at night, so there's no kids out.
Yeah, there's nobody out. We're sitting there like it's like cold and there's nobody there. We went so fast that my buddy, who's my best friend from high school, is sitting in the passenger seat or in the rear. And did you see, I thought he was rolling down the window to puke because my stomach dropped. I thought I was going to throw up. It was so fast, like lurches. We're going so fast. I look back, I see the window rolling down, and I thought my buddy was about to lean out and puke. And I'm like, dude, are you okay? Because, thought he was going to puke down the side of your Cybertruck, which would have been kind of a nice badge of honor. I would have hosed it off for you. But he was like, no, I just grabbed anything I could. And you have to grab the lever that rolled the window down. He's like, you just brace yourself because it's stupid. In any case, I don't know what the heck. That's not a Lamborghini, but it's probably faster than a Lamborghini.
It's way faster.
Okay.
It's way faster. And we turned around on a dime, and I was like, and I said the words that no man should ever say. Watch this. And I was like, phew.
Yes.
It's awesome.
And there was no real consequences. So that's probably coming your way later.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, maybe.
Carry on. You're pulling up. You wanted to talk about the school shooting. What is that? What is your revelation to that? Because I haven't even read news yet.
So a couple things on this. Number one, they're all coming out and saying that the person that did this was an alt-right, that the Antioch school shooting, Nashville suspect 17 posted alt-right paraphernalia, photos from past school shootings.
What are they calling alt-right paraphernalia?
Well, that's interesting.
Because that's always, look, I just read through stuff like this and I go, oh, I know exactly what's happening here. That's propaganda.
Yeah. So the shooting, it doesn't look like he shot anybody else.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Didn't shoot anybody?
I don't know. Apollo, did he shoot anybody else? He said what? Okay.
Yeah, he was the only death that I'm aware of.
Injured. No, two were dead. He shot someone. I shot a woman, a girl, by the way. Okay.
Terrible.
But let me go through this really quick. This is a really important part of this. Are you on Blue Sky? You're on Blue Sky. You go there you're just there to mess around, though, right?
Yeah, I just go to see stuff.
A vast majority of people on Blue Sky are radically, something's wrong with them, right?
It is absolutely unhinged. It is like if the people on True Social are aggressively Trump, the people on Blue Sky are aggressively mentally ill. It's not even it's like you'd think that they'd be a 1-to-1. It's like, oh, this is the hard right, this is the hard left. No, this is like the hard right of people who have some goofy ideas. There's some definitely like goofballs over on True Social. I don't hate it, but it's just kind of echo chambery. On the left stuff, the things they are saying are like obnoxiously untrue and wildly out of touch.
I mean, it's Rachel Maddow times like a million, right?
Yeah, it's people who are performing. Here's the thing: you can tell it's curated news in the same way you'd see like alt-right paraphernalia. That's not a thing, by the way. What is alt-right paraphernalia? Like you have
it's not
like a Proud Boys hat.
They just made it up.
Yeah,
they made it up.
Do you have like an upside down cross like we see some of these government employees wearing that are carrying like satanic symbols? No, it's truly crazy.
Okay, so it's not just crazy. What's even crazier about this is that how they identify this person as being alt-right. So
because we're saying who's evil.
Right.
That's what they're doing. Here you go. I'm looking at ABC's coverage because I want to see something else, see if they say the same thing.
This is really important. A nearly 300-page document posted on X, a social platform, contains numerous selfies of what appears to be the shooter with various alt-right paraphernalia scattered between statements against race mixing, wishing to take revenge on society, statements praising Adolf Hitler, and pages of explicit photos from previous school shootings. Let me just tell you what happened in this school, okay, so you guys understand. They had metal detectors in the school. Okay. And the one day that they said, oh, they're not working, they're not using it, he goes in and does a school shooting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Number one, why do they need metal detectors there? You know, what kind of area are we talking about? And number two, they went straight to that he had this page on X, but they won't list the page. They won't show us the page. It just said this.
Trust us.
And then they said social media accounts linked to the document and scattered across all platforms, including X, Kick, TikTok, and more, focused heavily on Groyper content.
Okay.
A nickname used by many online white nationalists and neo-Nazi groups. Okay. As well as incel content.
What is the nickname?
Groyper.
So this is Nick Fuentes stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
But here's the problem.
The same exact news coverage over at ABC. I'm just looking at theirs. He was highly into fringe online communities, including several known neo-Nazi venues across the sites. His writings expressed admiration for far right and incel mass shooters.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they want to link it with Christchurch, the situation that happened in New Zealand.
On a Blue Sky account linked in the document.
Why was that not part of the original piece there? Keep going.
Right. On a Blue Sky account linked to the document, a post on Wednesday morning read, "Today seems like a good day to die." The shooter that also appeared on live stream the attack in multiple platforms, including Kick. Wednesday night, Kick confirmed the shooting was partially live streamed on the platform, and the account was rapidly banned and the content removed. Okay, listen. Mm-hmm. The devil screams in the last hour. When you drive that devil right into the hole, it screams. And what we're experiencing now, first of all, you're not going to be able to be kept safe from every event. I mean, if you look at the UK, they ban guns. After they ban guns, they ban knives.
Zach said it yesterday. It's like you have to accept a certain amount of risk in a free society. That's your choice as an American.
And this is not a unique environment for us as Americans. Now, what does make us unique is that we should have the ability to protect ourselves. And if somebody is a threat, put them down like a dog. Sorry, I'm just going to say it.
How about this? Think about how many shootings we've had inside of courtrooms, federal courtrooms. Can you think of very many?
One back in 1982, and that's when they banned guns and put in metal detectors because a woman came in and shot the guy with a .22 in the courtroom.
These things have happened, but they're incredibly rare. And they haven't happened in quite a long time. Why do you think that? Why is it effective to have metal detectors and guys there that are looking for weapons? It's like, find me examples of things that have been fortified. But it's not like we don't know how to keep guns out of places.
All right, do me a favor real quick. Find me a picture of the guy that was the shooter.
I can't find one. I was looking.
You don't know why?
Tell me.
And I can't confirm this yet.
Okay.
But he's not white. I mean, let me say it again. He's not white. Now, I could be wrong in this.
This is generally the thing you can lean towards on this stuff, unfortunately.
But everyone where that I've looked, he's not white. So you got a white nationalist, Groyper, who posts all this Nazi stuff, and he's not white. And I'm looking at the comments right now. See what the comments
I'm saying the same.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, obviously not. This is the problem. This is. So you mentioned something very important. The devil is loudest. Mark Hout said this to me. You remember Mark Hout?
Yeah.
Mark Hout was attacked by the FBI. He was acquitted by the federal trial that the DOJ brought. They had no business being in. Folks, if you guys have been paying attention.
I love your listeners on Rumble, by the way.
Yeah, they're good people. We have the best live chat. We have the nicest live chat, I think, on any platform I've ever seen. People are just like, they're engaged. Solomon Henderson's the kid's name. You're seeing people like reporting, black
Hold
kid.
on.
Here's the deal. New York Post is where we're supposed to go.
To say thank you to that person.
Yeah, well done. Great work. So here's the deal. Mark Hout told me something 2 years ago. He said the reason why he had hope. This was before Trump got shot. This is before we thought that this was, a lot of uncertainties. I was fairly confident we weren't going to have an election. And he said, the one thing that I do know is true is that the devil is loudest. A wounded lion is loudest. It is not the lion that is effective, healthy, hunting, and surviving. When you are doing the thing that you want to do, you operate with stealth, you operate with silence, you just keep moving forward. You are victorious. You don't need to tell anybody because everybody can see the results. When you are losing, that's when you start blaming things like the ref, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a ball player, whether you're an animal. If you are not accomplishing your mission set, you start getting more and more desperate and more loud. And we are going to see more desperation coming out of the media who've debased themselves, which is something that's not new to the folks that follow this podcast. It's not new to them at all, but we're going to keep seeing it. They're going to continue. They're not learning the same lesson, which is why we're seeing them double down. They're doubling down on things that have been ineffective. And I don't mind it. I don't mind that people want to go and silo themselves off and get themselves involved with, they want to get themselves involved with a blue sky. If they want to go and do an echo chamber, the answer has always been more speech. The answer has always been more transparency. It's been more conversation. I said that I believe this to be the case. I don't want Trump to destroy the other side. I don't. I want him to offer them an opportunity, an ask, tell, make opportunity. Say, hey, we'd like you to join us. Hey, by the way, you can't do these things anymore. And if we have to do the make stuff, so be it. But oftentimes you don't have to make everybody. Just like that lady standing in the lady standing in the waiting room of the ER that I watched I'm telling you folks, there's nothing funnier than somebody getting mouthy, getting tased, and everyone around them going like, nope, I don't want that. Not today. I think a lot of people will understand that America almost always operates from the middle. It's the thing that we started off with, which is like, yeah, I don't have to agree with everything you said. You and I don't agree on everything. Would that be fair?
No, we don't. At all.
We can disagree in good faith.
100%. I accept you where you are and not where I want you to be, and you accept me where I am, where you're not where you want me to be.
It's like,
we still will come to the middle. I promise you. I can disagree with you. Someone else comes at you, I'll be the first one to the dance.
At the same time,
yeah,
let them disagree. If you want to come and tell me that you don't agree with my position, this should be a very American thing. We should be in a position to accept. We don't have to have you submit to what I have to say because I'm not God. I just have a perspective. And if it agrees with you, great. And if you want to discuss it or you want to give me some nuance, how many times does someone come to you and you're like, I have this strong opinion. You did it yesterday, it turns out. I have a very strong opinion about this thing. Somebody comes out and says, here's something else that you didn't know. It's novel information.
It changed me.
And you go, One of the proudest moments I had as an FBI agent was that I had a case that was given to me, and it was a slam dunk child sexual abuse case. It was a dude who was doing shady stuff. He was a sex offender. He was on the registry, and he was making trips to Mexico that he wasn't allowed to make. And he wasn't notifying the sheriff's department that he was traveling. And he was going south of the border. You know what he did south of the border? He brought bicycles down there. He brought upwards of 1,000 bicycles. Yeah. He took 1,000 bicycles south of the border to go hang out with the poorest children in the world, or at least in our hemisphere. And he went out there to some of the poorest colonias that are down outside of Juarez, Mexico. And you're like, oh my God, that sounds like he's going and finding victims. And everything pointed that way until we got the record unsealed that was 15, 17 years old, showing, no, he actually didn't have any kind of connection to child sexual material. What he did is he downloaded a bunch of pornography, which is not great, but he downloaded a bunch of pornography like probably a lot of people did on probably like a Napster from what we could tell. It looks like it was hard to read through, but it was like, okay, it was some kind of a file sharing program. He downloaded like, I don't know, gigabytes, whatever the hell that was in 2004 or 5, which was a lot. And there were some like less than 10 images that were associated with child sexual exploitation. So he self-reported and he brought it in. And so that changed everything. You're like, this guy felt so guilty. And then you find out that his wife said, if you do this ever again, if you ever look at any pornography, not child pornography, if you look at any pornography, I'm out. And so he said, I'm never going to do that again. And he changed his life. And so what did he do? He said, idle hands are the devil's workshop. I'm going to not go ahead and touch myself. I'm going to touch bicycles and I'm going to build bicycles. So he built them by the 1,000 and he brought them down south. And when that information clicked over, it was a novel thing because every single thing that we were reading and every single bit of the investigation pointed one exact way. It's like, this is really dark. And the people who worked with him, they were ashamed. They were like, did I help this guy? Was I enabling him? And I called up the people personally and I said, our investigation is going to end and it looks like we found out something else because we have new information. When you get that new information, you got to be open to being changed. You cannot be so siloed, so blue-skied that you can't even hear information and have the opportunity to say, maybe I don't know everything.
But they're not even hiding on the blue sky because that's exactly what it means.
I don't think those people actually even operate or believe the way that they act. And this is the problem that we're seeing from these propagandists. They're so desperate to sell something that's not even something that people want to buy. I think more and more Americans will come towards the middle. And I think that we're not going to agree with them. Actually, I don't want you to go out there with your folks that you meet every day and get consensus. What I want you to do is go out there and just treat them with good faith. And if they choose to operate in a bad faith manner, so be it. That's okay. You don't have to accept bad treatment, but we should at least give people a chance to come towards it. And you got to give them that chance to say, I'm not assuming bad faith on your behalf, because otherwise we don't have a country. That's the thing that I keep noticing. And whether it be elections or whether it be work at home or whether it be government agencies that aren't serving us, if we don't have a country because we can't agree that the common value is, I'm not going to treat you like an enemy because you're my countryman, we are not going to get through the next. And you know, they will lose. I think they'll get crushed. But I don't want to see people in America get crushed. I want to see them politely disagree and us try to find out some middle ground, not on values, but on policies. On values, I'm going to be pretty rigid, just the same way you are. It's the reason my kids aren't going into schools. In any case, we saw this big divide happen in 2020. That happened in the last year of Donald Trump's presidency. It would be a very nice bookend to see it close that chapter and open up a new one in 2025 as we see him kind of step in here. Like I say, 72 hours of activity. I don't even know what's coming today, and neither do you guys, but it's exciting. Someone reached out and they're like, hey, have you been hired back yet? Do you have anything, like any news? I'm like, news, dude, the guy's been in office for like not even the week. We're still in week 1. Usually people are still trying to figure out like how to get the boxes in the office. That dude's already sitting at the desk, signing off hundreds of orders saying, this is what we're going to try to fix. I appreciate that sense of urgency. It is the opposite of the speed of government. So, you know, here's the 4 years of non-governmental government trying to get our government back into control.
But if we don't get rid of the machines and the mail-in ballots, it's a 2-year speed bump to tyranny. Look,
I definitely agree with that.
I'm a math guy because they're going to take back the mids. And this is what people need to understand very clearly. They stole the down ballot races in nearly every state. And captured states like California, they had a lot of people where we had eyeballs and we were criticizing what was happening in the elections. Republicans won, took the whole thing. We're standing there and looking and going through things and this isn't right. Where we had people that were outside the polls that were asking people how they voted. They won those because they said, look, we can't take the ones that are most visible. We have to take the ones that aren't visible. And all the other ones like Colorado. And why does this affect people? They're like, I'm not voting. People say it all the time. I'm not voting. It's
right. My vote doesn't count.
Right? No. It doesn't. I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't count. But if we don't get to a place where it starts to count, How many people's property taxes have gone up by double over the last 3 or 4 years?
Oh my God.
How many people have had their taxes adversely affected at state level and local level? Mm-hmm. How many people are driving on roads that right now have tollways as a major portion of how they actually have to travel?
Yep. How many people's houses are on fire in California, even though they pay incredible amounts of taxes for some government that should be doing that job?
So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Every single.
By the way, that's still ongoing. People have we've moved on in the news
Palisades.
cycle. It's not the first thing. I was catching it last night. There are fires that are still burning. It's all over the place.
And it's spreading at 1.1% an hour.
And but here's the deal. We're distracted because the speed of government it's slow and methodical. We're getting new, exciting information. We've been distracted already. I've been distracted. And then I was sitting there before we got on the plane, before we flew out here, talking to my wife. And I'm like, California is still burning, right? It's just like one of those things I just lob a grenade into the conversation. And she was like, is it really? It's like, yeah, it's not covering anything in the news cycle because Donald Trump came in. So now we can do the Donald Trump is sending shockwaves. But there are people who are losing everything every morning for the last couple of days.
So I'm trying right now to get the guy that works for California Bureau of Investigations to come on the show as a whistleblower. I said, I'll mask your voice. I'll do whatever you want me to do. He's worked in the government position inside that organization for a long time. And he's like, Joe, I'm going to tell you something. Every single one of those fires, without exception that we've investigated, were caused by arsonists. Mm-hmm. Every single one. I'm telling you right now, we are dealing with it. We're dealing with terrorists, domestic terrorists, and we have to call these people what they are. And he has been prohibited from talking about it in the media. He is prohibited by the executive branch of California of telling the people the truth. He goes, never in my life have I not been able to prepare people for a rapist that's on the street or a murderer that's a mass killer and be able to not tell the public, see something, say something. Mm-hmm. But that is exactly what is happening in California.
It's the only not the only, but it's one of the powerful moments that we are experiencing right now is alternative media. Anytime we get a chance to dunk on the main, I guess we might as well. But the fact is they're subservient to official messaging. It's that thing that we talked about with Zach yesterday, which is that, listen, it happens not just in a government agency where you're like, oh, someone got crushed. It probably was their fault. The default position is their fault. When you see someone like, a guy coming out and telling a story, you're like, well, he's probably a crackpot because he went to Alex Jones. Like, I've been on Alex Jones.
Right.
Am I a crackpot? I don't feel like I am. I feel like I'm really grounded in facts. I have a lot of documentation to back up the things that I've stated. If you are out there trying to say things that are a novel truth that is going to dislodge what is the narrative that's going on out there? The narrative is like, Gavin Newsom does a great job. California's a wonderful place. All your tax dollars are going into good work. Except there's obvious evidence right now. It's right in front of your face. They're not catching people that shouldn't be doing this stuff. Using asymmetric threats. Isn't that what the FBI was supposed to be about? If we were talking about the counterterrorism space, isn't that what they should have actually been doing? Is theoretically like looking for people that were making these plans? Because from everything I've heard, and I haven't looked deeply into this yet, but I've got kind of the brushes of it. I'm seeing it on the outskirts. People are talking about multiple fires starting at the same time. Yeah. That involves coordination or devices.
Yes.
That involves conspiracy. That turns out to be a thing that people have to do something to make that happen. So are they involved in this? Are they investigating it properly? Are we looking for like sort of unusual terror threats? Because we let an awful lot of people in this country that don't want to see us succeed. It'd be really nice to have distractions like that.
That by itself is the definition of what we're dealing with as a society. And most of the people listening, and by the way, I have a cold, so I've been taking this stuff.
Yeah, Joe was almost dead last night. Then he went and slept out in the shed.
So that has a heater now.
Thankfully.
At least it has a heater. So most people feel invisible.
Yeah.
Most people don't feel like they have a voice, which is why they connect with people who are out talking about the things that they resonate with.
Yes.
Which is why platforms deplatform people who speak about the truth. Right. And I'm going to use myself as an example. I've lost 1.9 million followers across platforms in the last 4 years. I've been canceled 11 times. And yet I am literally, people will find me. They're like, oh, I found you on a new channel. Oh, I found you. Because
they want to feel like they're not being, we used to have a button on my soundboard and it was just like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. It's the Zoolander moment. You're like, am I the only one who sees that this guy's got only got one look? You're looking right through it. You want to make sure you're not the only person. This is the experience that I had
You're not alone.
I had this experience when I first went public with our story. So anybody who knows it, I went out on Dan Bongino's podcast and talked about it, but it wasn't unique. That was the only opportunity. It was like, I'm going to go out and talk about it. But even after I did that, and you get a lot of affirmations when you go and say things that people want to hear. They go, oh yeah, thank God you're speaking the truth. It's like, is it though? Are you critical? Because you should be really critical of me. You don't know me. You should take it with a grain of salt. Every time that I would go and do this, I would ask myself, like, did I miss the boat? Can I tell you how many times I've done that, Joe? How many times I've looked at myself introspectively and been like, did I blow it? Did I just really not understand what was happening? Should I have just gotten a shot, shut my mouth and gone back to work and, fed my family and not sold my house? And I was showing you my house that we lost last night. And it was really nice.
You lost a lot.
It was a really nice house. But I asked myself, I'm like, dude, did I miss the boat here? I think a lot of Americans are asking themselves, or am I taking crazy pills? Because I'm seeing something that is so clearly going on.
Two things can be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, you could be taking crazy. As I sat there, and every single time I did that, especially when I did it from a position of humility, the very opposite of what you see people do in these positions where they're arguing about authority. That every time we did it with humility, I had one thing that was always true. I was always affirmed from the outside without asking. It was a unique moment. It was a faith-building opportunity that I would question my own self, which you should, if you're not a psychopath, you should do. And every time I did, I'd get a phone call from a complete stranger. There's so many experiences, like my dad and I were talking about this the other day, like the power of prayer, the power of being humble and knowing that you don't know everything. And I'd be like, man, did I blow it? Phone call would ring. Hey, Kyle, I got to tell you, the people you're talking about, I've got some information from this particular, part of your former agency. And this guy did this sexually malfeasant thing. This person just did this illegal action. This person just sent out this email that is a policy that is unconstitutional. Blah, 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 blah. Every single time I was reaffirmed, like multiple times over sometimes. I'd get 3 phone calls in an hour from people I haven't spoken to in a year. And they'd hit me up. Hey, man, I just want to tell you this thing. And I'd go, oh, well, why are you telling me that? And they're like, I just, I know what happened to you and I just wanted to share this information. I think it might be useful to you. And the only thing that was really useful is it made me go, keep going. So I just kept asking the question. You should continue to do these things where you question yourself and don't sit there and assume that you have the answer. But if you're open to being humble and realizing that, there's an affirmation of a lot of this evil, don't go out there and find those silos. But that's why people come look for you, because they want to say like, hey man, am I crazy? Because I see this stuff and it looks crazy.
Yeah.
And Joe understand it. Joe saw, I don't even know Joe, but Joe said it too. I don't even know Kyle personally, but he's seeing the same thing I'm seeing. That's why I think people end up showing up there. They just go, thank God.
So that leads me to the next thing.
All right.
People pay 56 cents on every dollar to the government in taxes. You keep less than half of your wages, period. No matter what that's the reality.
Yeah.
State tax, all the different taxes you have out there. There has to be a restoration that happens at some point, an equilibrium, that parity that I talk about between leadership, but also in our community. Mm-hmm. The thirst of government has gotten so thirsty that it leaves no more meat on the bone. It doesn't allow anything left for the people.
To the point where when we have a tax cut, right, they look at that money as being theirs first. A tax cut is something taking away from the government's right to your own money versus them justifying any tax every time they have to do it. It's a fundamental disconnect from the reality that most people think that their money is their money.
Right.
The government thinks that their money is their money.
Their money.
Like your money is their money.
And people miss this part.
Yeah. Well, not conservatives, but
you can't. Well, I mean, conservatives don't do a really good job of actually thinking through the problem either.
I'm doing lowercase c. You're talking about capital C conservatives, the establishment of version.
Well, I mean, thinking through this problem, you cannot actually collect water in almost 3/4 of the states in this country.
Right.
So you actually can't put a bucket outside, water falling from the sky. God gave you that water. You're not allowed to collect it. Mm-hmm. It's illegal at all. You can't.
Well, we've got an EPA that thinks that the pond on your property that you use for your cattle is a navigable waterway. Yeah. So all of these things are the inevitable outreach of having something that believes that they have rights that they should. Government's only job. What the fundamental, like most simple job of an American government ought to be? I've heard it from multiple people, and they were all FBI agents, it turns out. Protect the American people from force and fraud.
Right.
That's the only thing. That's the only mission of the American government. If Donald Trump operates from a mission statement of the only job that we have here is to protect the people from force and fraud, we will have a really, really good outcome. And that's the opposite of what government usually does. Because what usually government does is says the purpose of government is to have government so that we all have jobs.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that's what we're seeing right now, for once. So anyway, maybe too optimistic for 72 hours in, but man, the first touch, like I said, the first time you touch a subject, you know right then whether that guy's going to decide to fight you or not, because he's going to feel whether or not he's going to be dominated, whether he's dealing with someone who's serious, who's going to ask and then tell and then make, or whether you're going to have someone that's going to be wishy-washy and it might be a fight because that person can make a decision. We always say the bad guy gets a vote. Right now, the government is getting a vote, but that vote, they are doing the wrong thing with that vote. And they are actually probably experiencing the opposite. They're so on their back foot because they haven't done this before. Anyway, it's a new game. Can we plug Shield Arms real quick too? Because we're going to go see them in a few minutes.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
So Apollo, if you'll throw the lower on there, there's no script, there's no read here, but these are my folks. I want to tell you guys, because one of the neat things about SHOT Show is that you get to go see new products that are being released. If you guys want to get something from them, first of all, they redesigned the game. They made the Glock 43 and 43X like one of the top selling handguns in America simply because of what they sell. It's Shield Arms, just spelled out, shieldarms.com. If you use my promo code, you'll save 5%, which is a good deal. You can go direct. Leave that for a second if you can. That 9 reloaded mag loader, I'm going to put something out on social media. These guys I met, they're Austrian. They're super cool. They speak English really well, but they have a funny sense of humor. That 9 reloader that you're seeing on the screen right now is freaking epic. Did you see it? Oh, God, we're going to put it out there. No. It is the best magazine loader that I've ever seen. Anybody who's ever used like an ETS solution or the Maglula or whatever the heck they're called that are all atrocious. This thing is so badass. The guy who built it, I was asking questions because I like to know origin stories. The guy, and they're right now, Shield Arms is the only people selling this in America. So if you guys want to find this thing, it's like $100. It's worth, dude, I'd buy it for 150. And I'm not even just saying that. It is so badass. So the deal is this. It clicks in the same way that it does in a magwell. So you have to actually push a button to release it. So it locks the magazine into place. You scoop them up off the thing. It's only for 9mm right now. And then you just crunch it. You do like a baby could do it. It's like really, really light grip. And it stuffs the magazine in instead of you trying to like jam something in or use a table or whatever else. It's freaking amazing. The mechanical advantage on this thing is awesome. And the guy who built it, he's not an engineer. He's a machinist. And what he did is he said, my friend was a competitive shooter and I wanted to be able to figure out how to do this stuff. I'm just telling you some of the cool stuff we've seen, folks. He goes, my friend's a competitive shooter. He wanted to be able to load his magazines. It's a pain in the ass to do it if you're shooting a lot of stuff. So what I did is I built this prototype and I just machined it out on CNC. And then I just hand milled it until I got where it was. Then I reverse engineered my own design. It's the way that people used to build stuff. Here's a problem. I'm going to make a solution prototype. Then I'm going to go back and figure out how to design it for mass production. They need to sell, I think they said like 13,000 more to be able to break even on their investment. But they should do that this year. Every single police department should have these. Every single competitive shooter. If you're a man who has a woman in your life that wants to go shoot with you and you don't like stuffing magazines and having arthritis, like thumbs at the end of it, whether you're tough or not, this thing is badass. We're not even selling them per se, but like I'm just saying it was awesome. It was like the coolest. I've seen it on videos. This thing is badass. They also, the guys at Shield Arms are now building this new prototype gun. You've seen like the way that SIG is selling. They're selling like the fire control unit.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can put a different modular deal on. Check this out. The Shield guys just did this. They have a modular chassis. It's seriously like a little piece of steel. It sits inside and holds the trigger unit, which can hold any Glock OEM trigger, any OEM spec trigger. Okay. So you buy this little piece of metal. That's the firearm. That's the serialized piece. They are open sourcing and allowing people to 3D print their own lowers, their own frames. And they're going to make that available on their website. So people who have 3D printers that want to print their own and dick around with the design, they'll be like, yeah, you can print the lower part for free. You can print the frame. The slide, same deal. It has like a Glock. They have a Glock 43X. They have a Glock 48 style, like size. It'll take their magazines.
Yeah.
And when we were playing with it yesterday, they have another one that they can sell you, and it's milled aluminum. So imagine like a Glock style, tiny, thin, single frame that holds, or a single stack, but it holds 15 plus 1, and it's milled aluminum with like really, really high end stuff. You can do it with the Glock bump or with the straight if you're not a Glock bump guy. So whether you want the grip angle to be Glock or SIG style, all of them, they all work with their magazines, and then they're selling pistol caliber carbines that work their little tiny magazine style. So you can carry like a tiny little pistol as your everyday, and throw that into a carbine and shoot an 8-inch, suppressed sub gun if you want as well.
It's now a good time to talk about DCF guns.
Let's do it, dude. Should I go? You know what the sad thing about DCF guns is I had all my talking points, but Apollo deletes them every hour. So like he's so paranoid that the FBI is going to read our text messages that I don't have all the talking points. I know you guys have 3 stores in Colorado. I know you guys are the biggest seller of guns in Colorado. Yep. So if you guys are there, apparently you're not in Denver.
We ship to all 50 states.
You're in Colorado Springs times 2?
Yes. We're in Castle Rock, which is 8 miles south of Denver.
Got it. Okay.
We are the largest seller of guns and ammo in the state of Colorado. And we have 3 locations, 5 ranges, 100-yard range indoors. 2 tactical bays, and TIG Tigan, Benghazi 13 hours. He on my team and part of our network.
You don't sell sandwiches, not a sub
We
shop.
do not sell sandwiches.
Okay.
We do not sell sandwiches. But we did do a commercial where we said we sell sandwiches because we actually tried to round them at Google and put up a thing that talked about selling sandwiches.
Yeah.
Was it notasandwichshop.com? And so
is it still live? Not a sandwich shop?
I think so. Yeah.
You have to check it out. There's a goofy, Joe is drawing like sub sandwiches out of holsters because he was trying. Kind of.
You'll play the commercial.
Apollo, play that just because it's comical. People, my audience probably hasn't seen it that much.
Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF.
Yeah,
What is DCF, you ask? We're the best damn sandwich shop in the universe. Do we sell hoagies? Well, we're DCF, and the F doesn't stand for hoagies. We got 9mm sandwiches. We got beastly baguettes, and we toast buns like no other. Looking for training on bun safety? We got you covered. And our ranges are the best place to test out your new not sandwich. So get your buns out, because the sun's out, and let's party!
He runs and has the call center with a bunch of guys there. You just call him and say, I found this price on this gun. We'll verify it. We don't even care if we lose money at that point. If you have a gun and you're in a different state and you even can't get a hold of that gun, but you're like, here's where the gun is, we'll just match it and send it to you. So
send it to the FFL of your choice.
Yeah, FFL of your choice. And then
do the transfer there.
Yeah, so that you have to pay a transfer fee, but so be it.
Yeah.
So it's the whole idea of DCF guns is, we grew from 1 location to 3. We'll probably have 5 or 7 by the end of. We're going to do what other gun stores are not doing. We're going to expand. They're shrinking. We're trying to consolidate the industry so that we have more power and lower prices.
I dig it. Plus, you were talking to Zach about his Sharps arms the other day.
Yeah.
You guys, I don't know what the end result will, but the odds are you guys will probably have some of their rifles hanging out.
Yeah, and we have guys that buy guns for $50,000, so it's pretty cool. And I'm not saying his guns are $50,000. I'm saying
they're not $50,000.
Yeah, but he's got some cool guns too.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Did you want to cover one more thing? Was there one more thing that was in your heart, or should we just go and start meeting some people? And we're gonna, folks. I'm gonna walk around the SHOT Show today and do some interviews with some of the people that are our sponsors and get their backstory because I like doing that stuff. I'll videotape some neat things. Like I said, I've got that mag loader which I wanted to show you because it's just cool. I kind of want to do the SHOT Show thing, even though it's kind of exhausting and sort of terrible. But we'll go capture a couple of videos of some neat things that are being brought to the market. You guys know if I had a choice, I'd never talk about politics. I might talk only about religion and guns. Is that a thing? I'd be like the one thing that Barack Obama wants to make fun of. Like I'd probably spend all my time doing those things because I think they're far more interesting. But we're going to go do some of that today. I'll give you final word if you have something to
final word. Go to @Kyle Seraphin. That's SERAPHIN on X. You can also follow him on Rumble at the Kyle Seraphin Show. If you look at the things that are sponsoring Kyle's show, I want to just tell the people that are listening that are on my side, both audio and video version, go over there and support them. They're great people. I'm going to meet the Shield Arms guys. Obviously, it's a great opportunity for you, and they're great products. And other than that, yeah, that's it.
My folks in my chat are asking me to go and take selfies. I'm just going to tell you folks that you're going to be very disappointed. I do not have the ability to do it. I walked by people. I walked by Matt Best the other day. I walked by a couple other people I recognized Grand Thumb and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I walked by these people and I'm like, oh, I know who that is. And then I'm like, I'm not going to bother that person. Like if somebody walks up to me and wants to take a picture with me, one, I think it's really weird. I'm not mad at you, by the way, if you want to do that. Like I'm flattered, but it's strange. And I have zero instinct to go do that. And maybe it's a lack of humility, but it's also that I can't be bothered with taking pictures. So unless something unusual happens, I probably will not have any selfie photographs from cool people, but I will tell you if I met them or not. And unless they ask for it, it's probably not going to happen. I'm sorry the selfie crowd's going to be disappointed. That being said, God bless all of you. Thanks so much for listening to us. I think I'm going to be off the air tomorrow. I think we're going to just tomorrow is a travel day. Let me tease this out to you because I'll push it out on social. I have maybe my favorite interview I've ever done coming up on Sunday. I interviewed Richie McGinnis. I did not know anything about him. I love going into these interviews a little bit cold. The story of Richie McGinnis and what he had to say to me, he is an incredibly articulate, very sophisticated communicator who does a bunch of riot chasing. And I was like, oh, he's just like a riot bro. He's like kind of a goofball, kind of like an adrenaline junkie. He's brilliant. He's interesting. And he was the last person to hold Jacob Rosenbaum on this earth as that guy died in his hands. He was there and he testified in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. If you guys do not know the story behind the story and the humanization of the people that died when Kyle Rittenhouse was put in an untenable position. It is the most interesting discussion about something that I thought I knew about. And if you guys have not seen it yet, make sure you check it out. If you want to subscribe over at KyleSeraphin.com on Locals. You'll be able to grab that early. You'll be able to see it on Saturday. It's already booked up. It's in the can. It is a really, really neat interview. Like I said, it might be, I shouldn't have favorites, but it might be my favorite interview I've ever done. So that's coming up on Sunday for our Sunday conversation.
I'll be watching for sure.
That's it, folks. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you guys soon. And then, like I say, we'll see you on Sunday for those of you that are paying attention.
All right. God bless you.
We're doing.
It's the only thing I get done right.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.